The dim lighting of Bellini's, the most exclusive Italian restaurant in Boston, did little to mask Harper Mitchell's discomfort. She glanced at her watch, 8:45 p.m., 45 minutes late. The sympathetic glances from the waitstaff had evolved from discreet to painfully obvious. Harper's fingers tightened around her water glass as she fought to maintain her composure, the condensation cool against her skin. "Would you like to order now, ma'am?" the waiter asked for the third time, his voice gentle with practiced sympathy. "Just 5 more minutes, please," Harper replied, the same answer she'd given 15 minutes ago. She adjusted her position slightly in her custom wheelchair, grateful for the restaurant's spacious layout that accommodated her mobility device without making her feel like an afterthought. At 32, Harper had learned to navigate life with a spinal cord injury with determined grace. The car accident 6 years ago had taken her ability to walk, but not her spirit. As the head librarian at Boston's Central Library, she'd built a fulfilling life, though admittedly a somewhat lonely one. Tonight was supposed to change that, her first date in nearly 2 years, with Brian, an architectural engineer she'd met through a dating app. The same Brian who was now 3/4 of an hour late. Harper's phone remained silent, no texts, no calls, no apologies. She'd sent 2 messages, the first casual, the second more direct. Neither had received a response. The reality was becoming painfully clear. She'd been stood up. She took a slow breath and squared her shoulders. It wasn't the first time someone had balked at dating a woman in a wheelchair, though most had the decency to cancel before she got dressed up and traveled across town. Harper signaled for the check, dignity intact but heart bruised. "I'm ready to—" she began, but her words were interrupted by a commotion at the front of the restaurant. A man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit strode through the entrance, commanding attention without effort. He had the confident bearing of someone accustomed to respect, with striking features framed by dark hair, peppered with distinguished silver at the temples. But what truly caught Harper's attention was the small boy holding his hand, no more than 5 years old, dressed in a miniature version of his father's formal attire. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Bennett," the maitre d' was saying, his normally composed demeanor flustered. "We weren't expecting you this evening. Your usual table is occupied, but we can make arrangements immediately." "That won't be necessary, Paul," the man, Mr. Bennett, replied. "Any table will do. It's late, and Michael needs to eat before bed." Harper couldn't help but watch the pair. There was something captivating about the contrast. A powerful man clearly used to having the world bend to his will, gently accommodating the needs of a sleepy child. The boy rubbed his eyes with a small fist, clutching what appeared to be a well-loved stuffed elephant in his other hand. The maitre d' scanned the restaurant with barely concealed panic, and his gaze landed on Harper's table, a prime corner spot with ample space, set for 2 but occupied by 1. Harper knew what was coming next. "Excuse me, miss," the maitre d' approached with an obsequious smile. "I know this is terribly forward, but we have a special situation. Would you mind if Mr. Bennett and his son shared your table? We're completely booked tonight, and—" "It's fine," Harper interrupted, hiding her disappointment behind practiced politeness. "My companion won't be joining me after all." The man, Bennett, stepped forward. "That's very kind, but we wouldn't want to impose." Up close, Harper could see his eyes were a striking blue, intelligent and assessing. Something in his gaze told her he had instantly understood her situation. "Not at all," she replied. "The table seats 4, and I was just about to order." The boy peered at her wheelchair with undisguised curiosity, but no trace of the awkwardness adults often displayed. "Is that like a race car?" he asked, his voice bright with interest. "Michael," his father admonished gently. Harper smiled. "Sort of. It doesn't go quite as fast, though." "I'm Michael Bennett," the boy announced, extending a small hand with endearing formality. "I'm 5 3/4. "Harper Mitchell," she replied, shaking his hand. "I'm 32 1/2. This earned her a giggle and a more relaxed smile from the father. "Grayson Bennett," the man introduced himself. "Thank you for sharing your table." The name registered immediately. Grayson Bennett, founder and CEO of Bennett Innovations, one of the largest technology companies on the East Coast. His face occasionally graced business magazines and local news. Even someone like Harper, who paid minimal attention to the corporate world, recognized him. "You're the library lady," Michael declared as he climbed into his chair. "You read stories on Saturdays. You did the dragon voices last month." Harper's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You've been to my reading hour." Grayson helped his son into a booster seat. Michael is quite the literature enthusiast. His nanny takes him to the Central Library every weekend. The dragons were awesome, Michael informed her seriously. The awkwardness of her abandoned date began to fade as they settled into conversation. Grayson ordered a bottle of wine for the table and sparkling apple juice for Michael, who beamed at being included in the toast. To new friends, Grayson offered, raising his glass. And awesome dragon voices, Michael added, carefully lifting his juice. Harper found herself laughing genuinely for the first time that evening. As they ordered and began their meals, Harper was struck by how attentive Grayson was to his son, cutting Michael's pasta into manageable bites, listening intently to his elaborate stories about school, and gently wiping sauce from his chin. Equally noticeable was how he spoke to Harper, directly and naturally, without the stilted caution or excessive helpfulness people often adopted around her wheelchair. "So, library science?" Grayson asked as they finished their entrees. "What drew you to that field?" "Books were my escape after the accident," Harper answered honestly, surprised by her own candor. "I spent months in hospitals and rehabilitation centers. Books took me places when my body couldn't. I wanted to create that same magic for others." Grayson nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Michael's mother passed away when he was just a year old. Books became our refuge too." The simple statement, offered without self-pity, created an unexpected connection between them. "Dad, can Miss Harper come to my birthday party?" Michael asked suddenly. Chocolate cake smeared across his smiling face. "It's dinosaur-themed, and she could do dinosaur voices even better than dragon ones." Before Grayson could respond, Harper's phone buzzed loudly on the table. Brian's name flashed on the screen, 3 hours too late. "I should take this," she said, a flush of embarrassment warming her cheeks. "Of course," Grayson replied, his expression unreadable. Harper answered the call, moving slightly away from the table. Brian's voice came through, slurred and casual. "Hey, Harper. Sorry about tonight. Got caught up with the guys after work. Maybe we can reschedule?" No mention of standing her up, no real apology. Just the clear implication that she should be grateful for any crumb of his attention. "Actually, Brian," Harper found herself saying, strength in her voice, "I don't think that's going to work for me." She ended the call and turned back to the table, where Grayson was pretending not to have overheard while helping Michael finish his dessert. "Everything all right?" he asked, his tone neutral. Harper paused, looking at the handsome father and his charming son, who had salvaged what should have been a humiliating evening. Something shifted in her perspective, a sense that perhaps tonight wasn't about a door closing, but rather about an unexpected one opening. "You know what?" she said with a genuine smile. "I think it just might be." What she didn't realize was how profoundly true those words would prove to be, or how dramatically her life was about to change. The following morning, Harper awoke to the familiar buzz of her phone alarm. As she began her daily routine, the practiced motions of transferring from bed to wheelchair, the careful selection of professional attire, her mind kept drifting back to the unexpected dinner companions of the previous night. After declining Brian's half-hearted attempt to reschedule, the evening had taken a surprisingly pleasant turn. Michael had convinced his father to order a second dessert, this one for Harper, insisting that chocolate cake was the best medicine for getting stood up. The child's directness had been refreshing rather than uncomfortable. When the check arrived, Grayson had insisted on covering Harper's meal despite her protests. "Consider it payment for the table sharing," he'd said with a warm smile that transformed his serious face. "Besides, Michael got more entertainment from your dragon stories than from any bedtime book this month." They had parted ways in front of the restaurant, Grayson helping Harper into her accessible rideshare with a respect that acknowledged her independence while offering assistance only where needed, a rare balance few people managed to strike. "It was lovely meeting you, Harper," he'd said, his voice carrying in the quiet evening air. "Will you come to my birthday?" Michael had asked again, yawning widely as he clutched his father's hand. "That's enough, buddy," Grayson had said gently. "Ms. Mitchell has her own plans, I'm sure." And that had been that, a chance encounter that had salvaged her evening but would likely remain just that, a pleasant memory with strangers, or so Harper thought. As she wheeled herself through the grand entrance of Boston Central Library, the morning sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating the marble floors. Tessa, the front desk assistant, waved her over with barely contained excitement. "You're not going to believe what was delivered this morning," she said, eyes wide. "They're waiting in your office." "They?" Harper questioned, already moving toward her office at the back of the main floor. "Just go see," Tessa called after her, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Harper pushed open her office door to find a stunning arrangement of yellow sunflowers dominating her desk, bright and cheerful against the backdrop of bookshelves. Attached was a simple cream-colored card with elegant handwriting. "Thank you for sharing your table and your stories. Michael hasn't stopped talking about the library lady with the cool wheels. Perhaps you'd consider his dinosaur party invitation. Saturday, 2 p.m., Bennett Estate." Grayson and enthusiastically Michael. A business card was paper-clipped to the note, with Grayson's direct contact information embossed in simple, sophisticated lettering. Harper sat back in her wheelchair, surprised by the gesture and unsure how to respond. It was just a child's birthday party, she reasoned, not a date. Still, the prospect of entering Grayson Bennett's world, a world of wealth and privilege so different from her own modest life, was intimidating. "Those are from the Grayson Bennett, aren't they?" Tessa appeared in the doorway, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. "The flowers have his signature style. Bellflower Designs only works with exclusive clients. What's going on, Harper?" "Nothing," Harper replied quickly. "I met him and his son by chance last night. We shared a table. This is just a thank you." Tessa raised a skeptical eyebrow. "A thank you that includes an invitation to their home. Harper Mitchell, what aren't you telling me?" "His son attends our Saturday reading hour, apparently," Harper explained, wheeling to her computer to check the day's schedule. "He wants me to do dinosaur voices at his birthday party. The mysterious single-father billionaire and the beautiful librarian," Tessa teased, her expression playful. "It's like a modern fairy tale." "It's nothing of the sort," Harper countered firmly. "And I haven't decided if I'm going yet." But as the day progressed, Harper found herself researching Grayson Bennett during quiet moments. The public information painted a picture of a brilliant innovator, MIT-educated. He had built Bennett Innovations from a startup to a technology giant in less than a decade. After his wife Julia's death from a rare form of cancer 4 years ago, he had established a foundation in her name dedicated to medical research. What the articles didn't mention, but Harper had glimpsed firsthand, was his devotion as a father. By Wednesday, curiosity had gotten the better of her, and Harper sent a text to the number on the business card. "Thank you for the beautiful flowers. They've brightened my whole office. I would be honored to attend Michael's party and contribute some dinosaur voices to the festivities." The response came almost immediately. "Excellent. Michael will be thrilled. I'll send a car for you on Saturday at 1:30. The estate isn't easily accessible by public transport, unless you'd prefer to make your own arrangements." Harper hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. The offer of transportation was practical, rather than presumptuous. Bennett Estate was in Brookline, a considerable distance from her apartment in Cambridge. Still, accepting felt like crossing a boundary from polite acquaintances to something more. "A car would be helpful, thank you," she replied finally, adding her address. "Perfect. Looking forward to seeing you." Fair warning, Michael has told his entire kindergarten class about the awesome library lady who's coming to his party. Harper smiled at her phone, an unexpected warmth spreading through her chest. Saturday arrived with perfect early autumn weather, crisp air, and golden sunshine that filtered through red and orange leaves. Harper chose a casual but flattering outfit, dark jeans specially tailored for seated wear, a soft emerald sweater that brought out the green in her hazel eyes, and a patterned scarf that added a touch of color. At precisely 1:30, her buzzer rang. The driver who met her downstairs was professional and prepared, with a luxury vehicle equipped with accessibility features that suggested Grayson had specified her needs. The Bennett estate proved to be even more impressive than Harper had imagined. Set back from the road behind wrought iron gates, the sprawling property featured manicured grounds and a stately modern home that managed to be both magnificent and somehow welcoming. Dinosaur-themed decorations lined the curved driveway, becoming progressively more elaborate as they approached the house. Michael spotted her first, breaking away from a group of children playing on an expansive lawn to run toward the car as it stopped. "Ms. Harper, you came," he shouted, bouncing with excitement in his dinosaur costume, complete with a long tail that dragged behind him. Grayson appeared on the front steps, casually dressed in jeans and a light sweater that softened his usual businesslike appearance. He approached with a warm smile as the driver helped Harper with her wheelchair. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice sincere. "Michael's been counting down the hours." "I wouldn't miss it," Harper replied, surprised to realize how much she meant it. The party was a joyful chaos of kindergarteners in various dinosaur attire, running through activity stations set up across the grounds. A professional entertainment team managed most activities, but Harper found herself the center of attention during story time, where her dinosaur voices earned enthusiastic approval from the young audience. "You're a natural with them," Grayson commented, appearing beside her with a glass of lemonade as the children dispersed to the next activity. "Library training," Harper replied, accepting the drink gratefully. "Though I usually don't have such an energetic crowd." Grayson chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. "I'm not sure who's enjoying this more, Michael or his friends." As they watched the children, Harper noticed a woman observing them from across the lawn, elegantly dressed with a calculating expression that seemed at odds with the festive atmosphere. Grayson followed her gaze, and his expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "My sister-in-law, Pamela," he explained quietly. "Julia's older sister. She helps with Michael sometimes." Before Harper could respond, Pamela approached, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Grayson, darling, aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" Her gaze flicked to Harper's wheelchair and back to Grayson's face with pointed significance. "Of course," Grayson replied, his tone neutral but cooler than before. "Pamela, this is Harper Mitchell, head librarian at Boston Central and Michael's favorite storyteller. Harper, Pamela Westfield, my late wife's sister." "Charmed," Pamela said, extending a manicured hand. "How unusual to have library staff at a family event." "Ms. Harper does the best voices," Michael declared, appearing suddenly at Harper's side. "Even better than Aunt Pam." Pamela's smile tightened. "Michael, sweetie, I think your friends are waiting for you to open presents." "Will you come watch, Miss Harper?" Michael asked, his small hand resting comfortably on the arm of her wheelchair. "I wouldn't miss it," Harper assured him, as Michael ran off. Pamela's polite veneer slipped slightly. "Grayson, a word?" Harper watched as they stepped away, their conversation just out of earshot but their body language speaking volumes. Pamela gesturing emphatically, Grayson responding with controlled restraint. A woman Harper assumed was the nanny approached with an apologetic smile. "I'm Christine, Michael's nanny. Please don't mind Pamela. She's very protective of Michael, sometimes too much so." "It's fine," Harper said, though she couldn't help wondering about the undercurrents she was witnessing. The gift opening proceeded with typical kindergarten enthusiasm, with Michael declaring each present the best ever before moving to the next. When all the guests' gifts had been unwrapped, Grayson stepped forward with a large box. "This one's special, buddy," he said, helping Michael tear away the wrapping. Inside was a professional-quality child-sized camera with a sturdy case. "Just like Mom's," Michael whispered, his eyes wide. "She would have wanted you to have it," Grayson said softly. "Ready to take pictures like she did?" Michael nodded solemnly before throwing his arms around his father's neck. The moment was so tender, so private, that Harper felt like an intruder witnessing it. She caught Pamela watching, her expression unreadable but intense. Later, as the party wound down and parents arrived to collect tired children, Harper found herself alone on the terrace, enjoying a moment of quiet. She didn't hear Grayson approach until he spoke. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" he asked, his invitation unexpected. "Just a simple meal after all this excitement. Michael would love it, and honestly, so would I." Before Harper could respond, her phone buzzed. The screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in months. Dr. Reynolds, her rehabilitation specialist. "I'm sorry, I should take this," she said, suddenly anxious. Grayson nodded understanding and stepped away to give her privacy. But not before Harper caught a glimpse of disappointment in his eyes, a look that suggested his invitation had meant more than casual politeness. What she couldn't know was how much would hang on her answer, or that the call she was about to take would change everything between them. Harper's hand trembled slightly as she ended the call with Dr. Reynolds, her mind racing to process the information she'd just received. "Is everything all right?" Grayson's voice broke through her thoughts as he returned to the terrace, concern evident in his expression. "Yes, I think so," Harper replied, still distracted. "That was my rehabilitation specialist. There's a new clinical trial starting next month at Massachusetts General. He thinks I might be a good candidate." Understanding dawned in Grayson's eyes. "A trial for spinal cord injury recovery," Harper finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "A new therapeutic approach combining specialized physical therapy with neural stimulation. It's shown promising results in similar cases to mine." She paused, the full weight of the possibility settling on her shoulders. "He can't promise anything, but there's a chance I might regain some function. Maybe even walk again." Grayson sat down beside her, his presence steady and grounding. "That's remarkable news." "It is," Harper agreed, "but I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high. The selection process is competitive, and even if I'm accepted, Success rates vary widely. Plus, the time commitment is significant. 3 months of intensive therapy 5 days a week. The library? Grayson asked. That's the complicated part, Harper admitted. I'd need to take a leave of absence. My assistant could handle the administrative duties, but the board has been looking for budget cuts. If I'm gone for 3 months... She left the implication hanging in the air. I see, Grayson replied thoughtfully. When do you need to decide? I have a week to submit my application, Harper said, tucking her phone away. Dr. Reynolds is sending over the details tonight. Well, Grayson said after a moment, his tone deliberately lighter, my dinner invitation still stands. I think this calls for a celebration. Cautiously optimistic, of course. Harper found herself smiling despite the whirlwind of emotions. I'd like that. Excellent, Grayson replied, his smile warming his features. I should warn you, after a party, our chef usually prepares comfort food. Nothing fancy. Comfort food sounds perfect, Harper said, suddenly aware of how hungry she was after the excitement of the afternoon. They found Michael in the spacious kitchen, already seated at the island counter, his dinosaur costume replaced with pajamas and a robe, his new camera carefully positioned beside his plate. Ms. Harper is staying for dinner, Grayson announced, helping her navigate to a space at the counter where a chair had been discreetly removed. Awesome, Michael exclaimed, his enthusiasm undimmed despite his obvious fatigue. Can we have movie night too? Grayson raised an eyebrow at Harper. That might be pushing our luck, buddy. Actually, Harper found herself saying, movie night sounds fun. What are we watching? Michael's face lit up. Dinosaurs. Dad got me a documentary about real ones, not just the pretend kind. The chef, a friendly woman named Maria who clearly adored Michael, served homemade macaroni and cheese with roasted vegetables, followed by warm apple crumble. The simple meal in the casual setting made Harper feel more at ease than she had expected in the grand home. As they ate, Michael chatted about his party, his new camera, and his dinosaur collection, occasionally taking photos of his food or his father with endearing seriousness. He has his mother's eye, Grayson commented quietly as Michael focused on capturing the perfect angle of his dessert. Julia was an incredible photographer, traveled the world for National Geographic before we had Michael. Is that how you met? Harper asked, curious about the woman whose presence still clearly shaped this household. Grayson nodded, a fond but sad smile crossing his face. She was photographing a tech conference in San Francisco where I was speaking. She told me later she only came to my presentation because the lighting in that particular hall was perfect for the shot she wanted. He chuckled at the memory. She wasn't impressed by my company or my credentials, just wanted to know if I'd move slightly to the left so the sunlight would hit me better. She sounds remarkable, Harper said sincerely. She was, Grayson agreed. After Michael was born, she scaled back her travel but kept working. The cancer diagnosis came out of nowhere, aggressive and unrelenting. She was gone within 8 months. I'm so sorry, Harper said softly. It's been 4 years, Grayson replied, his gaze drifting to his son. We're doing okay, aren't we, buddy? Michael looked up from his camera and nodded solemnly. But Dad still gets sad sometimes. The simple observation, delivered with a child's unflinching honesty, hung in the air for a moment before Michael continued, Mom's in heaven, but Aunt Pam says she watches us all the time. Is that true, Dad? I like to think so, Grayson replied gently. After dinner, they moved to a comfortable media room where the promised documentary was set up. Michael insisted Harper take the center position on the large sectional sofa, with himself nestled between her and his father. This is the best birthday ever, he declared as the film began, his small hand finding Harper's with natural ease. The domestic tranquility of the moment caught Harper off guard. How easily she had slipped into this intimate family setting. How comfortable it felt, despite having known them for less than a week. She glanced over at Grayson to find him watching her, his expression unreadable in the dimmed light. Halfway through the documentary, Michael fell asleep, his head resting against Harper's arm. Grayson carefully lifted his son without waking him. I should put him to bed, he whispered. I'll be back in a few minutes. Left alone, Harper took the opportunity to look more closely at the room around her. Photos lined the shelves. Michael as a baby, Grayson at various business events, and a striking woman with Michael's expressive eyes and warm smile who must be Julia. In one particularly beautiful shot, Julia cradled infant Michael while looking at the camera with radiant joy. She would have been 40 this year, Grayson said quietly, returning to the room. She was beautiful, Harper replied, turning toward him. Michael has her smile. And her spirit, Grayson added, sitting down beside Harper. Curious about everything, afraid of nothing. A comfortable silence settled between them, the documentary forgotten in the background. "Thank you for today," Grayson said finally. "Michael hasn't been this excited about a birthday since, well, for a long time." "I should be thanking you," Harper countered. "I had a wonderful time." Grayson turned to face her more directly. "Harper, I need to tell you something. When we met at the restaurant, it wasn't entirely by chance." Harper's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Grayson ran a hand through his hair, suddenly appearing less composed than she had ever seen him. "Michael has been talking about the library lady for months. When he pointed you out that night, I asked the maitre d' to seat us at your table. I knew you were waiting for someone, but—" "You knew I'd been stood up," Harper finished, understanding dawning. "Not initially," Grayson clarified quickly, "but it became obvious, and I didn't want to leave. Michael was so excited to actually meet you, and I—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I was intrigued. You weren't what I expected." "Because of the wheelchair," Harper said flatly. "No," Grayson replied firmly, "because according to my son, you were supposed to be a magical dragon queen who could make entire rooms of children sit still for 30 minutes. Instead, you were this poised, articulate woman who handled a difficult situation with remarkable grace." The wheelchair didn't factor into it. Harper wasn't sure how to respond, caught between surprise at his admission and uncertainty about his intentions. "I'm not sure what you're telling me," she said finally. Grayson moved closer, his expression serious. "I'm telling you that I engineered our meeting, and now I find myself thinking about you far more than is reasonable given how little we know each other. I'm telling you that my son adores you, and that matters to me more than anything. And I'm asking if you might consider seeing us again, under more straightforward circumstances." Before Harper could formulate a response, the doorbell rang, echoing through the house. Grayson frowned. "That's odd. I'm not expecting anyone." A moment later, Christine appeared at the door to the media room, her expression troubled. "Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Ms. Westfield is here. She says it's urgent." Grayson's frown deepened. "At this hour? Show her to my study, please. I'll be right there." Turning back to Harper, he sighed. "I'm sorry about this. Pamela has a flair for the dramatic. I'll just be a moment." Harper nodded, though an inexplicable sense of unease settled over her. Grayson's revelation about engineering their meeting still hung between them, unresolved. Minutes stretched into 15, then 20. Just as Harper was considering calling for assistance to find her way back to the main part of the house, she heard raised voices from somewhere nearby. This is exactly what Julia feared. Pamela's voice, though muffled, was clearly agitated. "You're making impulsive decisions again, Grayson. Have you forgotten what happened last time?" "That's enough, Pamela." Grayson's response was too quiet to make out clearly. "A librarian in a wheelchair," Pamela continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "What would the board say? What about Michael?" "Michael adores her," Grayson replied, his voice closer now. "Of course he does. She's a glorified storyteller. But a relationship? Have you considered what this would mean for the guardianship arrangement?" Harper froze, her hand tightening on the arm of her wheelchair. "Guardianship arrangement? You wouldn't dare." Grayson's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "The terms were clear," Pamela responded. "Julia wanted stability for Michael. After what happened with that trainer last year, the court agreed with me. One more questionable decision regarding Michael's well-being and temporary joint guardianship becomes my primary custody." Their voices moved away, leaving Harper stunned and confused. The evening that had felt so warm and promising now seemed shadowed by revelations and complications she hadn't anticipated. The clinical trial, Grayson's admission about their meeting, and now this cryptic conversation about guardianship and custody, it was overwhelming. She was contemplating how to gracefully exit when Grayson returned, his expression carefully composed, but tension evident in the set of his shoulders. "I apologize for the interruption," he said formally. Pamela had a concern about Michael's school arrangements. The half-truth hung awkwardly between them. Harper knew she had heard something she wasn't meant to hear, something that clearly involved her more directly than school arrangements. "It's getting late," she said quietly. "I should probably head home." Something like defeat flickered across Grayson's face. "Of course, I'll have the car brought around." As they moved toward the entrance hall in strained silence, Harper struggled to reconcile the warmth of the evening with its abrupt, cold conclusion. What had Pamela meant about guardianship? What questionable decision had occurred last year? And most importantly, Was Harper unknowingly stepping into a complicated family dynamic that could potentially separate Michael from his father? The car arrived, and Grayson helped her in with the same care he had shown earlier, though the easy connection between them seemed fractured now. "Harper," he said as the driver prepared to close the door, "about what you overheard. You don't need to explain," Harper interrupted, not ready to hear whatever carefully crafted explanation he had prepared. "But I do," he insisted, his voice low and urgent. "It's not what you think. Please, can I call you tomorrow?" Looking into his eyes, earnest and troubled, Harper found herself nodding despite her reservations. As the car pulled away from the Bennett estate, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that she had just glimpsed the surface of a much deeper story, one that might pull her under if she wasn't careful. Harper didn't sleep well that night, her mind replaying fragments of conversation and moments from the evening like a fragmented film reel. By morning, she had reached a decision. Whatever was happening between the Bennetts and Pamela Westfield wasn't her concern. She had her own complications to focus on, specifically the clinical trial application that represented her best chance at recovery in 6 years. She spent Sunday immersed in the detailed paperwork Dr. Reynolds had sent over. The trial was even more promising than he had initially described, with preliminary results suggesting significant improvement in patients with injuries similar to hers. As she worked through the medical history forms, Harper tried not to acknowledge the hope blooming in her chest, hope she had carefully kept contained for years. Her phone remained conspicuously silent all day. Despite his promise to call, Grayson made no attempt to contact her. By Monday morning, Harper had convinced herself that it was for the best. Whatever had drawn her into the Bennett family orbit had been a fleeting connection, perhaps meaningful in the moment, but ultimately unsustainable given the complexities on both sides. The library welcomed her back with its familiar rhythm and predictable challenges. By Wednesday, she had completed her clinical trial application and submitted it to Dr. Reynolds. By Thursday, she had almost managed to stop checking her phone for messages that never came. "You're moping," Tessa observed bluntly as they catalogued new arrivals together on Friday afternoon. "I'm focused," Harper corrected, not looking up from her computer. "On that same page you've been staring at for 10 minutes? Tessa raised an eyebrow. "Something happened at that birthday party, didn't it?" Harper sighed, finally meeting her friend's concerned gaze. "It's complicated." "Isn't it always?" Tessa replied. "Want to talk about it over drinks after work?" Before Harper could answer, the library's front door swung open, admitting a harried-looking Grayson Bennett. His usual polished appearance was slightly rumpled, as though he'd been running his hands through his hair repeatedly. He spotted Harper immediately and strode toward the reference desk with purpose. "I need to speak with you," he said without preamble. Tessa's eyes widened, and she made a hasty retreat, throwing Harper a meaningful look over her shoulder. "I'm working," Harper replied coolly, conscious of curious glances from library patrons. "I know. I'm sorry for the interruption." Grayson's voice softened. "I've been trying to find the right words for 5 days. Please, just 5 minutes." Harper hesitated, then nodded toward her office. 5 minutes. Once inside with the door closed, Grayson paced the small space, clearly agitated. "I should have called you Sunday as promised," he began, "but Pamela filed for emergency review of our guardianship arrangement that morning, and things have been chaotic." "Grayson," Harper interrupted, "you don't owe me explanations about your family situation." "But I do," he insisted, stopping to face her directly, "because you were inadvertently drawn into it and because—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because I care what you think of me." Something in his earnest expression softened Harper's resolve. "Then explain." Grayson sank into the chair across from her desk. "When Julia was diagnosed, she made certain arrangements for Michael's care, knowing the prognosis wasn't good. She appointed me as primary guardian, of course, but she also named Pamela as a secondary guardian, someone to ensure Michael maintained connections with Julia's side of the family." "That seems reasonable," Harper observed. "It was," Grayson agreed. "Initially, the arrangement worked well. Pamela was a connection to Julia for Michael, and she helped tremendously in those first difficult months." He leaned forward, clasping his hands together. "But as time passed, Pamela became increasingly controlling. She objected to my parenting decisions, criticized the nannies I hired, questioned Michael's schooling. When I started dating again last year, my first relationship since Julia, she filed for custody review, claiming I was emotionally unstable." "Because you were dating?" Harper asked, incredulous. "Because I was dating my personal trainer," Grayson clarified grimly. Pamela painted it as a midlife crisis, a sign of poor judgment. She convinced the family court judge that I was making impulsive decisions that could harm Michael's stability. Understanding dawned on Harper. So now she has joint guardianship. Temporary joint guardianship, Grayson corrected, with conditions. I need to demonstrate consistent sound judgment in matters affecting Michael for 1 year before the arrangement will be reviewed again. And in her view, getting involved with me would violate that condition, Harper concluded, a hollow feeling settling in her chest. In her view, yes, Grayson confirmed. But Harper, Pamela doesn't get to dictate my life or Michael's. She's exploiting a clause in Julia's will that was never meant to be weaponized this way. Harper absorbed this information, trying to see all sides. She obviously cares about Michael. She does, Grayson acknowledged, but her idea of what's best for him is narrowly defined and, frankly, often more about control than Michael's actual happiness. And the argument I overheard, Grayson grimaced. After you left, I confronted her directly. I told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that I wouldn't allow her to interfere in my personal life or to disparage you. She responded by filing for review first thing Sunday morning, claiming I was exhibiting concerning patterns again. So you stayed away from me to protect your guardianship, Harper said quietly, understanding now. No, Grayson replied firmly. I stayed away because I needed to resolve this situation properly before involving you further. I spent the week with my legal team, gathering evidence of Pamela's manipulative behavior and documenting Michael's well-being under my care. Yesterday, the judge dismissed her emergency petition and reprimanded her for misusing the court's resources. Hope flickered across his face. The judge has also agreed to move up our annual review to next month instead of waiting until spring. My lawyers are confident that Pamela's latest tactics will actually work against her. Harper processed this information, her librarian's mind cataloguing details and seeking patterns. Why are you telling me all this now? Grayson's expression softened. Because I've missed our conversations. Because Michael keeps asking when you're coming over again. And because I think there's something between us worth exploring if you're willing. I have complications of my own, Harper reminded him. The clinical trial. I know about the trial, Grayson interrupted. Or rather, I know about that specific research program. Bennett Innovations is one of the funding partners for the neural interface technology they're using. Harper stared at him, momentarily speechless. I'm not saying I have any influence over their selection process, Grayson clarified quickly. The medical team makes those decisions independently, but I am saying that if you're accepted, you won't need to worry about your position here. I have connections at the library board. I don't need your help, Harper said automatically, an edge creeping into her voice. Of course you don't, Grayson agreed, surprising her. You're remarkably capable, but sometimes accepting help isn't about need, it's about allowing someone to care about you. The sincerity in his voice caught Harper off guard. For 6 years she had prided herself on her independence, on never requiring assistance beyond the practical. The idea of letting someone in, of being vulnerable not just physically but emotionally, was terrifying. This is moving very fast, she said finally. I know, Grayson acknowledged, and we can slow down. But I wanted to be completely honest with you about my situation. Harper studied him, this man who had unexpectedly entered her life just over a week ago. What exactly are you proposing? Dinner, he replied simply. Just the two of us this time. No family drama, no interruptions, a proper first date. Despite herself, Harper smiled. That's it? Just dinner? For now, Grayson said, returning her smile. Though I should warn you that Michael is already planning your next visit. Something about teaching him dinosaur photography techniques. The mention of Michael softened Harper's remaining reservations. The little boy had worked his way into her heart with surprising ease. All right, she decided, dinner. Relief and pleasure illuminated Grayson's features. Tomorrow night? I know a place with excellent accessibility and even better food. Tomorrow works, Harper agreed. As Grayson left, promising to text her the details, Harper felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of possibility, of doors opening rather than closing. 3 months later, Harper gripped the parallel bars, sweat beading on her forehead as she focused intensely on the neural signals she was attempting to send to her legs. That's it, Dr. Reynolds encouraged from beside her. Small movements, focus on the feedback from the stimulator. The trial had exceeded even the most optimistic projections for Harper's case. 6 weeks in, she had regained sensation in her upper legs. By week 10, she could produce small controlled movements. Now in the final phase, she was working on weight-bearing exercises that seemed impossible just months ago. "I need a break," she gasped, lowering herself carefully back into her wheelchair. "You're making remarkable progress," Dr. Reynolds observed, making notes on his tablet. "One of our star participants." Harper smiled, too exhausted to respond verbally. As Dr. Reynolds moved on to his next patient, she wheeled herself to the observation area, where Grayson waited, as he did 3 times each week during her sessions. "You were incredible," he said, handing her a water bottle. "I'm a sweaty mess," Harper corrected, gratefully accepting the drink. "An incredible sweaty mess," Grayson amended, his eyes warm with admiration. "Michael's going to be sorry he missed this session. He's convinced you'll be racing him across the lawn by summer." The past 3 months had seen a gradual but steady deepening of their relationship. Harper had been accepted into the trial program, and true to his word, Grayson had used his influence to ensure her position at the library remained secure during her leave of absence. More significantly, the court had reviewed the guardianship arrangement and restored Grayson's full custody rights, with Pamela granted structured visitation. The decision had eased tensions considerably, and while Pamela remained cool toward Harper, she had ceased her active opposition to their relationship. "How was the board meeting?" Harper asked, stretching her tired muscles. "Productive," Grayson replied. "The new accessibility initiative passed unanimously. The foundation will be funding adaptive technology in libraries across the state starting next quarter. The Julia Bennett Foundation had recently expanded its focus to include accessibility programs as well as medical research, a change that Harper knew was partly inspired by their relationship. "Ready to go home?" Grayson asked, gathering her things. Home had become a fluid concept over recent weeks. While Harper maintained her apartment in Cambridge, she spent increasing time at the Bennett estate, where a guest suite had been subtly modified to accommodate her needs. "Yes," she said simply. "Michael's science project presentation is tonight, right?" 6 o'clock, Grayson confirmed. "He's been practicing his dinosaur facts all week." As they made their way out of the rehabilitation center, Harper reflected on the unexpected turns her life had taken since being stood up at Bellini's 4 months ago. The clinical trial was offering hope for physical recovery she had never anticipated, but the emotional journey had been equally transformative. In Grayson, she had found a partner who saw her completely, her strengths and limitations, her independence, and her vulnerability. In Michael, she had found a child whose enthusiasm and acceptance had healed parts of her heart she hadn't realized were broken. "What are you thinking about?" Grayson asked, as he helped her into the car, his hands gentle and familiar. "Beginnings," Harper replied honestly, "and how sometimes they look exactly like endings until you get a little further down the road." Grayson smiled, understanding in his eyes as he leaned in to kiss her softly. "Speaking of beginnings, I have something to ask you later." "Oh?" Harper raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his mysterious tone. "After Michael's presentation," he said, a hint of nervousness beneath his composed exterior. "It's a family decision, after all." Harper's heart fluttered with sudden understanding. The small velvet box she had accidentally discovered in his desk drawer last week while searching for a stapler. Could tonight be the night? "A family decision," she repeated, warmth spreading through her chest at the implication. As the car pulled away from the rehabilitation center, Harper gazed out at the city streets, transformed by spring's early blooms. The journey ahead would have its challenges, her recovery would be ongoing, and blending their lives would require patience and compromise. But for the first time in years, Harper found herself looking forward rather than backward, embracing the unexpected second chance at both mobility and love that fate had somehow placed in her path. The paralyzed librarian, who had once been abandoned at a restaurant table, was now moving steadily toward a future filled with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. One step, one day, one moment of joy at a time.